Hello and welcome to Superman in Media, the 12-part series where I look at Superman's role within movies, TV and video games. In part 10 I shall be looking at the 2006 film Superman Returns, as well as the failed Superman films that were in production between Superman 4 and Superman Returns. A fifth Christopher Reeve Superman-led film was initially pitched to the Salkins by veteran comic writer Cary Bates, whose story would have ignored the events of Superman 3 and 4 and returned to its classic first and second movie roots, going for a balls-out sci-fi story featuring Superman and Brainiac, as Bates put it. The premise would have seen a new take on the Brainiac Kandor storyline, where Brainiac comes to Earth and shrinks Metropolis, leading Superman on a journey where he discovers Kandor, where upon dying is reborn as a normal man, and made to reconnect with his Kryptonian roots. The film never saw the light of day since the Salkins put the project on hold to work on a Christopher Columbus film. Doing so bought enough time for Warner Brothers to reacquire the rights to Superman and start production on the TV series Lois and Clark, which, as well as cancelling the TV show Superboy, cancelled the fifth Superman film. Shortly after getting the Superman rights back, WB began to develop their own film in that of Superman Reborn, which was to be inspired by the death of Superman's story from the year prior. John Peters, the producer behind the 1989 hit Batman, was brought on board, as well as Jonathan Lemkin, who was to write the screenplay. Reborn would have seen Superman face down Doomsday, ending with him dying. With his dying breath, his soul is transferred to Lois's body and she falls pregnant with his child. Born days later, the baby grows up to become Superman. Unsurprisingly, WB rejected the script immediately, bringing in Gregory Pointer to write another one featuring the death of Superman, but this time no magic super baby. Superman this time would have been brought back to life by a secret government agency, most likely Cadmus or Star Labs. Again, WB said no, and John Peters had to drastically overhaul the project and included Kevin Smith in the writing phase. What was Superman Reborn quickly became Superman Lives, yet again involving Superman's death, this time with Brainiac involved. Kevin Smith wrote a script with only 3 rules laid out by John Peters. Superman couldn't wear his familiar red and blue costume, he couldn't fly, and he had to fight a giant spider in the third act. Peters also wanted to portray Superman as a quote-unquote violent caged animal, or a fucking killer. Presenting Peters with the draft, the producer wanted Smith to add a gay R2-D2-like character for Brainiac to have as a sidekick, as well as a Chewbacca-like character. Eventually, costume design was underway as Tim Burton was brought in to direct it, and Nicolas Cage was tapped to play Superman. Burton quickly got rid of Kevin Smith's script in favour of Wesley Strix, which featured Brainiac fusing with Lex Luthor to become Luthiac. In 2015, the documentary The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened was made and explores the insane project with cast interviews and unseen footage and concept art. In 2002, Andrew Kevin Walker penned a script featuring a clash of the Titans, Batman and Superman. Director Wolfgang Peterson was attached to direct. The story involved a retired Bruce Wayne, whose wife was murdered at the hands of the Joker, seeking revenge, and is tricked into fighting his old friend Superman, only to learn that the plan was hatched between the Joker and Lex Luthor to pit the heroes against each other. Both heroes team up to take them down. The script was revised by Akiva Goldman, the man behind Batman Forever, and was now called Batman vs Superman Asylum. The script was released online years later. Many names such as Matt Damon, Johnny Depp, Colin Farrell, James Franco and Paul Walker were all thrown around for both Batman and Superman. While Batman vs Superman was being prepped, WB also saw other scripts submitted. In late 2002, they set about developing a J.J. Abrams script called Superman Flyby. The story would again see the death and return of Superman, but the rest of the script was presented as a full reboot of the Superman mythos, beginning during the Great Kryptonian Civil War, which featured Jor-El locked in battle with his brother Carter Zor. Eventually, the war would extend its way to Earth, and Kal-El takes up the mantle mantle of Earth's protector. After his resurrection, Superman leaves Earth for Krypton, setting up a proposed sequel. Brett Ratner was signed on to direct after several false starts made him leave, being replaced by McG. Actors considered for Superman were Jude Law, James Marsden, and Josh Hartnett. Future Supermen Brandon Routh and Henry Cavill also auditioned for the role of Superman. The film was almost ready to shoot when the production decided to shoot in Australia to save money. Thanks to his fear of flying, McG had to drop out. J.J. Abrams, however, offered up his services as director, but at that point, his only credits consisted of 2 episodes of Felicity and 3 episodes of Alias, so WB was not comfortable with giving him a big multi-million-dollar production. The studio instead hired Bryan Singer, who reconstructed everything and turned it into the 2006 film Superman Returns. After not performing as well as the parties involved thought it would, Superman Returns' sequel Superman the Man of Steel was scrapped. Although no script was ever written, Bryan Singer has had a basic idea of the movie, which would have been set a few years after the events of Superman Returns. The film would have seen the new Krypton that Lex had created steadily grow to the size of the moon. New Krypton comes to the attention of an unknown visitor, whom are revealed to be none other than Kryptonians. And now we come to the discussion part of Superman in media, and obviously we're going to be talking about Superman Returns and the Nicolas Cage Superman, since they're the two that we really know all about. Superman Returns, obviously, I really like. There are parts in it I don't like, mainly the creepy stalker Superman, when he's stalking his son or not son, we're not really too sure since we never got a sequel, but I do really enjoy it, and I always say to people that if you look at the film and then you look at it with maybe one more extra action scene in it somewhere near the back, I think it could have been a really great film, because up until maybe about halfway, just before the Kryptonite island starts getting made, it starts getting a little bit stale just around that part, and seeing a Superman flying around the city saving people and everything, that's really cool. But I think he could have done with like maybe a villain he could actually have a fight with. Like, I always assumed that like maybe Metallo was meant to be in it, and I know like one of the bank robbers was actually named John Corbin, or like was going to be named John Corbin. I think it was the guy who shoots him in the eye, and you get that really cool scene where the eye sort of like crumples the bullet and everything. I think he was sort of meant to be John Corbin, or like alluded to or something. But I really think that if maybe he was to fight Metallo or something near the third act, I think it would have definitely made the movie a lot better and much more exciting for a lot of people, since a lot of people think that it gets really boring towards the end, and it kind of does as well, unless you're like me, who's read Superman for so long, and you see this movie, which actually does him quite a bit of justice as well. Absolutely amazing seeing him, you know, lift that Kryptonite island and everything, seeing all that stuff. That's really cool. That's stuff that you kind of see in the comics, him lifting islands and stuff like that. Like, you don't see that anymore or anything. But yeah, one more extra action scene would have made that movie so good. But the stuff we did get in that film was actually really great. Like the aeroplane scene is absolutely amazing. It's a great like reveal for Superman. It's a classic and everything, and it also harkens back to like his John Byrne first appearance sort of thing, where he saves that experimental plane and everything. I really like that, and the way he saves it as well is really exciting and everything, and the way it's shot and everything. Bryan Singer did a great job on that, which also brings me to our next film, which is the Nicolas Cage one. So apparently on the set of Superman Returns, whenever anyone would question what Singer was doing, like whether it be costuming or what he'd get the character to do, he'd have like a binder which would have a picture of Nicolas Cage in the Superman suit, which was, we've seen it, everyone's seen it, and it looks horrible. But that's because it's a costume fitting. It's not like him on set in a suit. It's like a costume fitting, so everything looks really weird and everything, and he'd use that as a result. It's like, hey, this is what could have happened, and frankly I'm kind of disappointed that didn't happen, because we just got that amazing documentary from John Schnedt not too long ago about Superman Lives and the Nicolas Cage Superman film, and the way that, you know, Tim Burton and everyone involved sort of talks about it, it would have been absolutely insane. But I think it would have been a really interesting insane way. Like some of the stuff they were creating for it, like the art you see in it, and it just looks amazing. Like some of the designs they had and everything. And Tim Burton is kind of a weirdo sort of guy who's really great with sort of designs like that, as you see in like Edward Scissorhands, his Batman films, stuff like that. So he could have done something kind of really cool with this, and I think he would have, but it was just in that weird place where it was too expensive and also too weird, and just nothing really meshed with one another and everything. And it's a shame we didn't get to see it. I'd like to see it maybe come back in like an animated form or something, like they do an animated movie with Nicolas Cage voicing Superman. I think that'd be really cool. I know they have sort of hinted at maybe doing, I guess, projects that never got made into live film into animation. I know Jeff Johns has said something like that in the past, and I think that'd be a really great script to adapt into an animated film, especially for what they were planning on doing with him. And then we have the other Superman films that I talked about before. You know, obviously Superman 5 coming after Superman 4, which kind of shat the bed thanks to Canon being absurdly cheap. If you don't know anything about Canon film, there's a great documentary called Electric Boogaloo which tells you everything you need to know about them, and I suggest people go watch it because they talk a little bit about Superman 4 in that as well, and just how cheap they were. They were like reusing footage and everything, but that's partly the reason why Superman 5 was pretty much cancelled basically, as well as like the stuff with Warner Brothers and everything, and cancelled Superboy and everything, because it was like the rights were in this like weird nebulous where like people owned certain parts of it and everything, and then obviously Warner Brothers bought it all wholesale. But it sounded like a really cool storyline, and I'm really surprised we haven't got it adapted to a comic, since it was written by Carrie Bates, who's a comic writer. So I'm surprised we haven't really gotten anything, the story sort of adapted, and it sounded really cool, like a sci-fi story featuring Superman and Brainiac. That's pretty cool, you know, Superman going to Kandor and everything, and it sounded really cool. And it seems really weird as well, considering they were going to use obviously Christopher Reeve, Margaret Kidder and all them sort of things. So it seems sort of out of place what their films were doing as well, so it would have been fresh and different as well, which I think would have been really cool and maybe would have reinvigorated the series. Then we have obviously the first Batman vs Superman film, which was like early 2000s, and I think they hinted at it in I Am Legend as well, or one version of this one. And yeah, this one didn't really get very far to my understanding. I know that like the script leaked online and it was it was passable, I guess. It was kind of a weird story where Bruce Wayne had like a wife who was murdered and whatnot and all this sort of stuff. It was kind of really weird, but what I really liked about it is that it didn't bother with like origins or anything. It just sort of said, yeah, Superman and Batman have been around in this universe for ages, and now they're sort of fighting each other because of this complicated plan with Joker and Lex Luthor. I kind of liked that about it. I thought that was pretty cool. I guess Superman Flyby, which was sort of like the one that came this close to being made. Like they literally had stuff made for this film, and obviously because McG dropped out because he is scared of flying, of all things, and it didn't make any sense. And it's really funny like looking at it in hindsight as well, since J.J. Abrams, who's the guy who actually wrote the script at this time, he wanted to direct, but they didn't want to let him direct. And it's funny, you see J.J. Abrams now, he's directing like Star Trek and Star Wars and these big multi-billion-dollar making movies, and just think they wouldn't give it to him because he wasn't quote-unquote proven. I thought that was absolutely amazing. Yet they'd buy his script and everything. It was so crazy, and I would have liked to have seen it. I know there's like pictures of the suit that they were going to use. The suit looked really cool, and there's even I don't think they leaked the auditions. I think there's like stills of Brandon Routh's audition, as well as I think Henry Cavill did an audition for this as well. I know Henry Cavill did a bunch of auditions for different Superman stuff, but it would have been really cool. It was a really interesting take on the whole civil war of Krypton and all this stuff, and I think at one point Robert Downey Jr. was being tapped for Lex Luthor. So could you imagine if this movie had been made, we probably wouldn't be having Iron Man or the MCU or anything. So yeah, it would have been totally different, would have changed everything, I think. So it was a shame we never really got that. And then of course we had stuff like the Justice League movie, which was literally a day away from shooting and stuff like that. That's not really Superman related. And we have like the sequel to Superman Returns, which again, we don't really know a lot about, since no one really can talk about it, or either it didn't get very far into that process where they can talk about it. But from what like I've been able to gather for this and knew already, it was like Brainiac, and there's maybe other Kryptonians, and it was all very different stories sort of combined into this weird thing. And obviously we'd get this story about Clark's son, you know, the boy we saw in Superman Returns and everything, and I think it would have been really cool. I could see what they were doing, like they'd make that one sort of the action heavy one, whereas Superman Returns would have been sort of like alright, we're just going to settle everyone into this universe and just sort of get ready for the next big one. The next one's going to be massive blockbuster, and I think it would have been pretty cool because it might have allowed Brandon Routh to be his own Superman and not just a Christopher Reeve playing Superman sort of role, which he was in Superman Returns, since Superman Returns is technically Superman 5, but not really. But yeah, there's definitely some great Superman films that never got made or came so close to getting made, and it's a shame that some of them didn't get made, and there's also the fact that some of them didn't get made is a blessing as well. So tell me in the comments below what your favorite Superman film is out of the current ones that are out there, as well as ones that you would have liked to have seen from the list I made, or ones that maybe never got into development like the ones I talked about. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Remember to leave a comment in the comment section below, or follow the links on screen now to other reviews or topic videos. If you haven't already, remember to subscribe for more weekly reviews and videos.